Thank you, and welcome to the Agency Balance Podcast, where we talk about marketing, tech, real-life self-improvements, and things that make you happy to find your balance. Agency Balance is sponsored by SmartAcre, a marketing technology agency that creates solutions that align B2B marketing, sales, and service to drive results throughout the entire customer journey. Get the MarTech experts. Get smartacre.com. Here is your host of the Agency Balance Podcast, David Snyder.
Welcome to another episode of the Agency Balance Podcast. Today, I am joined with Lisa Zwickel, Chief Strategy Officer and my partner at SmartAcre. Welcome to the podcast, Lisa.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm super stoked that you're here too, because not only are you here, you're also my first guest ever on the Agency Balance.
I wasn't going to tell people this, but this is also my first ever podcast.
Oh, well, I'm glad it's the first for many. So let all of our listeners out there just give them a sense of who is Lisa Zwickel and just talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So where to begin? There's so many things that I could share, and we'll get into some of that today, but one of the things I'm most excited to talk about is my role at SmartAcre, my life being an executive in an agency, but also my personal life. You know, I'm a mom. I have two little boys. That happened quite quickly. 2 under 2, living that life for a while there. I have an awesome husband, Kent, who I'm sure I'll talk about as we get into our conversation, because he's my rock. Very important person in my life. And I've been doing marketing for a long time now. I've been in my professional career for about almost 10 years. I started doing marketing in an agency. I was a PR professional, so that's what I graduated from college in, advertising and PR. I always avoided marketing in college because there were a lot of math-related courses you had to take, and I've always loved journalism and telling a story, and that's really translated into my career as a demand gen marketer now. Content and telling a story is really one of the things I love to do most for my clients. And so another aspect of my career is I was living in the Washington, D.C. area for a while. That's where I really grew my roots. And I remember actually sitting in the Pentagon and thinking about what I wanted to do next in my role and in my career. And it was always digital. It was always what I wanted to be doing, because you can measure everything, you can see results, you can feel the impact and communicate that to everyone that you're working with, the brands that you're working with, the clients that you're working with. And I remember I got a call from you, Dave Snyder, after I submitted my resume to SmartAcre, and I am so excited that we're working together still. I remember leaving my interview with you telling Kent, I'm going to work there. I am going to work there. And he looked at me like, well, what happens if you don't get the job? And that was never in my mind. I was like, I'm going to work there. This is incredible. I can't believe there's an agency like this in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And here we are.
That's good. Yeah. So you go from the Pentagon, which is obviously, you know, I've never been there. I can only think what it is, to working in an agency setting, and that you talk about all the positive things, but there has to be some negatives, and I don't want you to share anything that's going to get you in trouble or anyone in trouble, because we talk about the Pentagon and this is already getting flagged. But you know, share maybe one or two things from your marketing journey, because when we have a platform like this, we can talk about stories that didn't go too well, and the Agency Balance is all about finding balance and finding things that didn't go so great. Maybe think about some of the things in your journey that didn't go so great, that allowed you to make a change.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we all learn from those bumps in the road along the way. I know for me personally, what brought me back to agency life is just the pace. You know, some people thrive in an environment where they can take their time and move a little bit slower. But for me, I love the pace of agency life, and it really was what when I started my career in an agency setting and then I went into more of government consulting, I miss the pace of agency life. And it's what I hope we can talk about a little bit more today, is how to really find that balance when you're moving really, really fast and being challenged to juggle and think on your toes and have multiple priorities going on at once. It's one of the things I love about agency life, but it translates to life in general. There are times where you have a little bit more easy going in your day to day, and then there are other times where things just come at you fast.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it absolutely, those who are in agency life who are listening to this podcast totally get that. On my previous episode, I talked about one of the key things to not get overwhelmed is prioritization and prioritizing what you work on, including your time, thinking about prioritizing the things that make you happy on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. That's how I found balance. So talk about some of the things as you're entering in this kind of new chapter, being an executive, being a power mom of 2 little boys. Talk about how you're still finding your balance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant journey, and I love being able to have the role of being a working mom now, because I think a working parent in general, it's easier to talk about how to balance that, or why you need to take time off, or why you need to step away. People get it, right? I mean, if you're a parent, you understand it. If you're not a parent, you kind of understand that there's, a human that's relying on you. So I am going to talk about that a lot today, but I want your listeners to understand that it's easier for me now to recognize balance now that I'm in that, and there's something that's so relatable to talk about. But there are other aspects in my career where I needed balance, where it wasn't so easy to talk about. So if people are listening today and they're feeling like, well, yeah, Dave's a father first, and Lisa's talking about being a working mom, I think no matter where you're at in your career, where you're at in your life, there are reasons why you need balance. And some of them might not be so easy to talk about or ask for, or feel like you can give yourself permission for that. For example, you know this, Dave, because you were there to help support me through it, but Ken and I had a really hard time starting a family. And there was a lot of times that I had to step away or randomly tell you, I'm gonna not be at work this morning, and maybe not be okay sharing the details. And that's happening for people in so many different ways, whether they're taking care of a family member who needs support, or maybe they're taking care of their own mental health and they don't want to talk about it. So as we talk about balance, I'm glad I have this platform to now say, I'm a working mom and this is how I was able to find my balance. But it really is a personal journey. And the thing that being a mom has given me is I can so easily give myself permission, because I have no choice. I can't tell my kids, sorry, I can't end my day at 5:00, because I have no choice. So to me, that's one thing that I've really learned on my journey, is that you have to be able to give yourself permission and know that no matter where you are or why you need to step away or give yourself that grace, it's really important to do it.
Yeah. And then I assume you're immediately feeling guilty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mom guilt is a real thing.
Yeah. Mom and dad guilt. And wherever you are, whether you're mom or dad, or if you're a caretaker, or you have nieces and nephews, you always feel guilty because you feel like you're not doing that for you. You immediately want to be helping somebody else, right?
So. Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately. We traveled together recently. We took the SmartAcre team to Philadelphia. We had a training event, and it was the first time that I was away by myself from both kids. And part of me was so excited. I was so excited. My 8-month-old, he does not sleep through the night. So being in a hotel room with a big bed, I was so excited. And then 24 hours in, I was missing my family like crazy. And I came home and I was talking to my dad, and he was asking me how training was, and I was telling him the highs. And then I told him, I feel so guilty for feeling good about being away and then, missing everyone while I was gone. And I've always mentally kind of had this feeling of being a working mom, of I'm making a choice, and being a working mom is this selfish choice. I'm choosing a career over staying home with my kids. And he said something that resonated with me so much, where I realized it goes back to that story that we tell ourselves and the permission that we give ourselves, because I love work so much that I was thinking of it as the selfish choice. But he said to me, you really have to try to not think about being at work as spending time away from your family, because really what you're doing is you're giving to them, you're providing for them. I'm setting an example for my little boys that come into my office and ask to work. They ask to sit next to me. We turn on Vidyard and we record little videos, which are so hilarious. I'll have to send them to the team at some point. But that's such a cool thing. And as soon as he said that and that switch went off in my brain, I realized, wow, I need to stop telling myself that this is the selfish choice, when in reality, I'm giving so much of my time, my effort, because it's important for my kids to see that. And also it fulfills me, so it makes me a better mom and it provides for my family.
Yeah. Last episode I talked about, I dropped a stat, which was in 1960, it was a long time ago, different styles, although I think they're coming back. In 1960, only 20% of females worked, like period. And now I think the stat was 80% of household providers, male or female, are providing for their family and they're in the workforce. So, I mean, that has just really shifted. And I think it's pretty cool that they're able to see that. They're going to remember that. They're absolutely, I mean, I kind of have some glimpses that I'm wheeling it back when I was a kid to remember when my mom was working, and I can remember her doing those things. So, and my mom's awesome too. So, so they're gonna remember that, absolutely. So it's it's those selfless things, and you are working for your family. Mm-hmm. Talk about the difference between prioritizing and juggling.
Well, I love juggling. Most people probably wouldn't say that, but I know you said we could curse.
We can curse.
But I feel like a badass when I recognize all the things that I juggle on a daily basis. It just makes me feel powerful. And I think I could look at it one way as, oh my gosh, I have all these balls up in the air, and what am I going to do? What if something drops? What if I mess something up? But what I try to think about is, and I did not come up with this, someone else said it somewhere, and it just has stuck with me, so maybe someone listening will be able to tell me who said this so I can give credit where credit is due. But it's this whole thought of a glass ball, and some days maybe I have two. I can keep everything up in the air, but I always have to have my eye on the glass ball. So if something else drops, as long as it's not the glass one, it's okay. It's really okay. I'm probably going to mess something up. I'm probably going to drop a ball somewhere along the lines. But that glass one is the most important. I can give you some actual examples of this because, even just this week, I've had this come up. And I think it was Tuesday, my littlest, he had a bad allergy attack. So I knew I had to take him to the doctor. It was planned into my day. I ended up having to move up the appointment because he was my glass ball that day. He had hives all over his body. I needed to make sure he was okay. And by doing that, it allowed me to, keep everything else rolling. I over-communicated. I let everyone on the team know what was going on and was realistic with myself and with them of, this is my glass ball for the day. I'm going to get everything else done that I possibly can, but that is my priority. Then the next day, I knew I had to get a proposal done for a client. There were a bunch of things on my to-do list, but that was the most important one. So when I had that quiet time, that's my great heads down working time, I made sure that I got that done first and foremost. So then everything else felt like icing on the cake, felt like gravy. I was still getting things done, but I wasn't over planning my day, and I wasn't setting unrealistic expectations for myself, because that's something I have really had to work on, is right-sizing my expectations to meet my reality of my life, which is different than it was a couple years ago. And I had to give myself permission to do that.
That's great. I think hopefully our listeners are taking a lot from that. I am. You're right. As you kind of progress in your life and your career, you figure out those things. But hopefully everyone listening can take something away there. And I like that, the glass ball. I'm going to remember that. I think inadvertently I do the same thing. I always have that one thing where like, I got to do that because I work off the list of 3. I always think of the 3 things that I want to accomplish in a day because I'm the same thing. Like I feel like I'm in power when I do those 3 things. I feel accomplished. As humans, we all want to feel a sense of accomplishment that we've checked off those to-dos and move something forward. Progress, not perfection.
Right.
But great. Yeah, and then I think the other thing is like, like waiting for things to happen, right?
Yes.
Like you're just, when you're setting those priorities or you're expecting, like talk about that a little bit, like, about stop waiting for things to happen or to become something.
Yeah, it's tough because I think no matter where you are in your life or your situation, there's always the what if situation, or when this happens, when I have a little more time in my schedule, or when I come back from my vacation, or when that big project is done, then I'll start waking up early and going to the gym, or whatever it may be. I was doing a lot of waiting for the stars to align at the beginning of this year. I just kept telling myself, once Charlie, my baby, once he sleeps through the night, I'll do this. Or once we have this new SmartAcre team member in place, I'll be able to do this. And then I realized I was just kind of making excuses for myself. And yes, situations can be challenging and make it a little bit harder for you to get to that point, but progress is really, really important. And as soon as I changed that thought in my brain of, instead of waiting, I'm just going to start doing. And it might not be perfect and it might be hard, but it just feels really satisfying. And as soon as I started to do that, things started to change almost immediately. And it's wild. I think that there's so much to be said about just moving toward your goals and doing whatever you can to get there, as opposed to just waiting for the stars to align.
Yeah. I want to circle back on something you said there previously to waiting for things that happened. And you said it is communication. I think it's really important to talk. Like if you have, a spouse, a significant other that you can talk to, both, especially when we're working from home, it's to talk about what's going on. Or back when you said, I'm not going to be in the office this morning because I got to go do a doctor appointment. I think communication is really important, and not to be afraid of communicating. So, any thoughts on like just things that you found, and maybe it's as simple as just open and honest communication, not being afraid.
I think that that's really important, but I also think in terms of communication, we talk a lot about team dynamics and helping your team understand your work styles and your preferences, and that's all really, really important. But one of the things that I try to keep in mind, and I try to bring this up with other team members when they're going through a tough situation, or they're having a bad week, or they're beating themselves up and just saying, oh man, I'm not doing the best thing for the team this week. Try to remind them to talk to themselves as if they were talking, reverse the roles, right? Tell yourself what you would tell me in this situation, right? So if I'm coming to you, Dave, and I'm like, oh man, I had such a bad week, I'm doing a crap job, I really am letting myself and the team down, to really be able to internally say to myself what you would be telling me, and be kind and have a kind conversation with yourself. I think that's really important, because it is sometimes hard to have those conversations with your team and be honest and say, I need a little bit of grace today because of X, Y, and Z. But you also need to give yourself that permission to give yourself that grace. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes total sense. And the caring aspect, absolutely. That's what I live by, is always be caring, and no matter what it is. Like I had an example of something like that where, I like sports cards. You're looking around, and I collect sports cards.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere.
And this one guy was like, I wanted to buy this card off him. He's like, you know what, you can just have it. I'm like, no, I'll pay you for it. He's like, no, I tell you what, you take the card, but the next time somebody needs something, the next time somebody needs a $5 or needs help, without thought, do that. And I'm like, absolutely, I'll totally pay this forward. And it was cool. So we were just communicating that way. We're talking about communication. We're just, communicating and just, caring. It's like that took me by surprise. Anything like that come up recently for you where like someone took you by surprise with just being open in their communications?
Oh, yeah. Often. It really resonates when a team member comes to me and tells me something that I feel really honored when someone will share a little information of what's going on in their world. And I think in some ways people might feel like, oh, I don't want to talk to my manager or my boss about something. They might perceive it as a weakness, or they might think less of me. But in reality, every time someone tells me what's going on in their world, it really just makes me feel so honored that they would feel comfortable having that conversation, and knowing that they're telling me because they trust me to have their backs. So yeah, I think those moments of vulnerability when people share things like that or ask you to do something kind for someone else, it just sparks this wave of momentum that can sometimes go the opposite way too. If you just, in agency life, I feel like this happens often where things start to ebb and flow and you get into those really, really busy seasons, and then all of a sudden you're like, ugh, why is everyone so grumpy? What's going on? And then you have a moment where you can come together, or you launch a really great project and you just all of a sudden feel the momentum start to shift the other way, and then you get to ride that tidal wave of just positive energy, and it makes such a big difference.
Yeah. The key thing there is don't be afraid to celebrate those wins.
Yes.
Right? Because I think so many times we're focused on improvement and getting better, and focused on negativity. Oh, well, this didn't go right. The next time something good happens, take a moment and celebrate that. Mm-hmm. Celebrate that with your friends, your peers. Take that moment, because especially because we're talking about agency life, but whatever line of business you're in, it might be thankless, right?
Yes. Yeah. You've personally taught me to develop a thick skin when it comes to client management. Because, you work really hard for your clients. You dedicate so much time and energy to them. And it's important in that agency setting to start to define those boundaries, start to recognize the things that you can control and impact and put a lot of passion into, but also those things that you just kind of have to wonder, maybe what's going on in their world, and what can you change, what can you impact, what can you move forward, and what are those things you just need to let roll off your back a little bit.
Yeah. I've been really working on that this year. Is one of the things is like, you don't assume, right, that someone else's day is going the way that you think it's going. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what happened because that person cut you off, driving to the office or wherever. You don't know what's happening with them personally, especially like if you're on a call or something, maybe, that you could tell like something's off, but you don't know what's going on. So yeah, so just be, empathetic and care for them is really key there. Celebrate the small wins, and do it often, because I think that's really important. I think, do you use any sort of like journal or a book like that you write things down to like praise yourself or be thankful for on a daily basis that you can share with anybody, or any reminders that you have to kind of like put a sticky on it, or that you remind yourself, or is it just interwoven in your daily basis?
I think it's just interwoven at this point, but when I was younger in my career, I had a folder in my mailbox that I just kept track of any time that there was positive feedback from a client or from a peer, and if I was just having a moment where I was beating myself up or getting in my head, I would just scan through some compliments, some things that went really well. Because as recovering type A. There's a lot of ways that you really just try to make yourself better all the time, and that can be daunting. So taking feedback, listening to it, working on the things that you can improve, all for that. It's important to advancing in your career, but also remembering those things that you did really well, because if you focus on doing those things even better, it's going to be so much more energizing than trying to fix all the things that, one, maybe might not be in your control to begin with, and two, just might not ever really be strengths for you. And that's okay. You can leverage other people on your team to build you up in areas that you're not the strongest in.
So also on the like kind of maybe circling back on on the personal front, becoming a parent into the workforce and recognizing that you have to do some things for yourself. Mm-hmm. Can you share anything like places that I need to go travel, or what else do you do for fun?
Yeah, I love to be outside. We're going to the Adirondacks next week. Actually, I'm very excited. It is my happy place, upstate New York, big mountains. Actually, both my boys, their middle names are after high peaks in the Adirondack Mountains. So very near and dear to our hearts. And it really puts things in perspective for me, because I feel like, there are these daily, weekly challenges that we overcome. And in my mind, I think of them as mountains. I'm climbing up them, I'm working towards something, and it's really important. You're talking about celebrating even the small things of when you get to the top, you have to pause, you have to look around, you have to take it all in. And hiking, being outside, it always gives me that perspective that I need to just remember what I thought was hard last week probably isn't going to seem so hard a month from now. And I did it, and I overcame it, and I can just pause and relish in the, yeah, we made it. We did it.
Have you ever gotten like halfway or quarter of the way or like 10 feet in, you're like, I can't do this?
Oh, yeah. Well, Kent, in typical Kent fashion, we started climbing all the 46 high peaks with the hardest one, Mount Marcy, which is the highest, the hardest. It was a 15-mile hike, and most people do it overnight. They stop and camp. We just did it in one day. So probably the whole time I was saying we couldn't do it, but we did it. And then there was another experience where it was a pouring down rain. I think it was May, so it's their wet season there. There's always higher streams that turn into rivers that you can't cross, and we were determined to do 2 high peaks that day. We tried so hard to do it, and we got to this point where we could not cross what was a gushing stream of water. We probably would have been washed away, and we had to turn around, and it was sad to do that, but we were laughing the whole way back because we were soaked and tired, and we didn't accomplish anything.
Do you get like a punch card or like something that you like cross off or check your list when you're doing these? And then did you ever, like, for those ones you just go, meh, I tried?
You can get patches when you accomplish them. So yeah, we didn't get patches for that day. It's okay though. It was a good memory. Yeah,
it makes it for a much better story. And like you said earlier, you are a badass. that is pretty badass for both of you for starting out. And I like that because you set out to do something and you're like, we're gonna work on we're gonna do the hardest first, because then it can only get better and easier. And I kind of am the same way. Whenever I'm approaching something like a project, I'm like, I like try to tackle the hardest thing first. Get the big ones out of the way. So that's pretty fun. So what else? I mean, like, are you like way into that? Like, you gear up and like you have like a special bottle for hiking and all these different.
Oh yeah, we're way into it. I mean, we've done it in negative 20 degree weather and have been on the top of a mountain peak. Rookie mistake. I bit into a granola bar. Didn't realize it was frozen solid. So yeah, we're starting to get back into it now because we had to take a little break with the 2 babies. But when we're there next week, we have backpacks for the both of them. We're going to strap them on our backs. We're probably not going to do a high peak, but we are going to do some hiking and start to get back into it. And then our 10-year anniversary is coming up in October. And I know Kent is probably already picking out which mountains we're going to climb together.
Well, that's super cool. So in addition to like, hiking, finding an outlet, just kind of, to talk a little bit about that. Like what can you share for others that are kind of maybe struggling with, day to day and Zoom, being on Zoom call after Zoom call, like any suggestions you can give for finding an outlet that you can share with someone?
Yeah, I think you really have to get to know yourself and be honest with yourself and start to tap into those moments where you feel like you're not feeling energized anymore, and just ask yourself, what do you need? What do you need? And my needs for myself have changed since my life has changed. And right now I find that sometimes I just need to be alone. I need quiet time. I need that time where I can let my internal dialogue talk to myself and listen to my thoughts and just be able to reflect. And sometimes that's 30 minutes on the treadmill. Sometimes I just need to be the one to pick up William at daycare so I can be alone in the car for 15 minutes. And just being honest with whoever you need to be honest to with what you need, whether that's your coworkers, your manager, your significant other, the people that you're living with. Just not being afraid to say, hey, I need to take whatever it is, whether it's exercising or a healthy meal or time alone, good night's sleep. Really challenge yourself of, what do I need right now? And am I starting to feel like I'm not being efficient or not being productive? And if that's the case, why is it? Because it's probably something. You just need to be real with yourself of what that is. And I've realized this year that if I don't do that, or if I let that go on too long, I'm not going to have a choice, because I'm probably going to get sick, or I'm probably going to be staring at my computer screen wondering why I can't write this email, why it's taking me so long. So you really have to be honest with yourself when it comes to that, because if you feel like taking a break is going to set you back, it's not. It's going to propel you forward, even if you're taking a couple days off, because otherwise your body or your brain are going to do it for you.
Yeah, like routines. If you're not working breaks into your routine, you're not going to have them in your routine. So you have to be really purposeful for that. Awesome. We're both agency owners. Been at this for quite some time, and we're really focused on marketing and technology. And I think hopefully finding balance through your day to day is something that with some of these words we can help others. But maybe let's talk a little bit about, just working in that setting, some of the things that we found both from a technology side and a marketing side. Anything that comes to mind?
Well, marketing and technology, it's always changing. There's always something to learn. There's always something to experiment with. There's always something to read. And I think that can be challenging, especially for junior people in their careers, of just when to turn it off, or when to take a break, or when to carve that time into their day and give themselves permission to learn and grow. And I think that's really, really important. And as agency owners, as we talk about balance, it might seem easier for us to do in our roles. But I think the challenging part for us, and something that I'm super passionate about, is how do we make sure our team gives themselves the permission that they need to find that balance? Because it's hard. You can come up with the best policies, you can give unlimited PTO, all these great things that we strive to do, but unless our SmartAchers and anyone in their career can find that balance for themselves, no company can give that to them. So I think it's really, really important for if you feel like you're struggling, or if you feel like you're stuck, or if you feel like you have to work a bajillion hours a week to be successful, to talk about that and to have conversations with your managers, or find a mentor to really help you start to work on finding balance, because it's going to set you up for success in the long run.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I always say, like, do the things that you love every single day, and that goes for the work that you're doing. And I think so many of us, if we get up and we're doing the things that we don't like to do, we're going to procrastinate. We're not going to do them. We're just going to ignore it. Mm-hmm. So I think if you're in a role, I think my advice would be like, if you're thinking about it, you're in a role and you're listening to this and you're being like, oh, I really like doing that, but I don't like doing that. Like, we'll just go back to communication, talk to your manager and be like, hey, listen, I'm really struggling with this. How can I get better at this? So it might be like, a specific piece of technology. Like you mentioned video earlier. That's something that we use. It drives great, video content, one-to-one communication, but it's like, I'm nervous on video. I don't know what to do with my hands and like all these crazy things, right? And I think, just communicating that. But I think the other thing is if you see an opportunity, don't be afraid to have that conversation. I think that's what you're saying, right? Is like have that conversation with your manager and be like, you know what? I know this isn't part of my job. This isn't part of my role, but this interests me. And it would be great if I had the opportunity to explore this technology or certification or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you can't wait. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, you can't wait for the stars to align. And I never did that in my career. If there was something that I was passionate about or if I wanted to do, I did it. Even if it required me putting in extra time, but it was time that felt good for me and I was excited by it, and it helped me to propel forward and to remain really passionate about everything that I'm doing. And that does really help you find balance, because then it doesn't feel like work. You're doing things that are exciting and fun.
Yeah, that's just it. Is like, I think one of the coolest things when you talked about like how you got started, one of the things that you liked about agency life is it's fast paced. And one of the reasons that I like it is because you get to work for so many different clients and different challenges. And, one moment you're working on doing something with robotics to, health tech to, financial services. So you get to really, you're getting up and you're working on all those different companies in a given day. But that also can be really challenging because it could be hard to focus. And I think that's the other challenging thing is as you're coming up in your career, you're trying to figure out, well, what am I really good at and what do I like doing and how do I get better at those one areas and get more focused? Because when you're first starting out, you're doing everything. You're trying every different thing and you're probably not that good at most of them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And to your point about really having a lot of clients that you're dealing with, is the story I always told myself as a younger account manager was, oh my gosh, this client is waiting for me to respond to this email, and I told them I was going to get this to them by tomorrow. I have to get it to them by tomorrow, and all that pressure. But then I started to realize I'm putting all this pressure on myself. Like, my client is not sitting around checking their watch to make sure I'm doing something on time. By really exercising that art of managing expectations and communicating and understanding what your clients have going on as well, what their day is like when they need to report in something to their manager, you will get things done on the right time and be able to find that balance and not stress yourself out unnecessarily.
Yeah, I just thought of something when you said about being open and honest with your client. Early on, as I got into kind of project management, I lied to a client. I was like, you know what it really did? I remember this. So I won't give the details of what type of client it was, but it was in the feminine hygiene.
Oh boy.
And I lied to him. I'm like, yeah, the website's almost done. We're going to have it live. We'll have it ready for your review on Monday. And it wasn't anywhere close to being done because I wasn't paying attention, and I totally messed up. So guess what happened? That weekend, I had to work on that website all weekend to get it done because I lied and because I didn't want them to call me out.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to get in trouble. So after that, I really was like, you know what? Life happens, things happen. What's the worst what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to be mad, pissed, you're going to get fired. That's right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. We were talking about being honest and open with your team, but there's power in doing that for clients too. I've recently been telling clients, especially if we're working together, or our relationship is newer, I let them know I don't work late because I like working late. I work late because I take breaks throughout my day. So if you see me respond to an email at 9:00 at night, it's because my kids are in bed and I spent time with them throughout the day, and just helping give everyone perspective into your world. The workforce has changed. It's so different now, and I think people respect that, but it's also important to establish some boundaries so, clients don't get into the habit of emailing you at 10 o'clock at night expecting a response, but letting them know, yeah, this is kind of how I manage my day, so just a heads up.
Yeah, I'll do the same thing. I'll respond to things, but actually I don't send them. I save them as my draft, and then the next morning when I get up really early, I fire them off, because I also don't want them to be like, look at this guy, he's responding later. Because I used to have a boss, he would expect a response when he emailed at midnight.
Oh.
I'd be like, the one thing that I value is sleep, and that's what I was doing when you emailed me. Like, why didn't you respond at 1 o'clock? Because like most people, I'm sleeping.
I really hope you responded with that.
No, I responded the next day, and then he replied, well, why didn't? So, excellent. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us on the Agency Balance podcast. If someone wants to follow you, can they do that? How would they do that?
Of course, yeah. LinkedIn is where I am most active. So find me on LinkedIn. Lisa Zwickel, rhymes with pickle. Lzwikl.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dave. Your podcast is awesome. I can't wait to continuing to listen, because throughout my career you have taught me so much about finding balance, and I am excited for the world to get to learn more from you. Thank you.
Subscribe to the podcast at agencybalance.com, Apple, YouTube, or Spotify.